Hey, this is Andrew. I wanted to start recording these screencast videos, and I didn't know where to start. But I also noticed that I was not implementing some of the stuff that I wanted to implement because I knew that I wanted to do a screen recording of it while I was implementing it, similar to some of the projects that I've done before. And I realized that I just have to bite the bullet and start doing something. So I may not get this whole feature done today, but I am going to start taking a stab at implementing webhooks in Bullet Train as a standard feature. So the foundation sort of for the approach that I'm taking is based on this article that my friend Benedict wrote. And I'm not going to implement them exactly like what Benedict recommends in this article. Like, some of his naming conventions are different than the way I want to have the naming conventions in Bullet Train. But ultimately, I'm taking a lot of inspiration and really getting a lot of confidence from this article that he took the time to write, kind of thinking through the fact that, okay, you know what? I'm not missing anything. I don't have to over-engineer it. I don't have to overthink it. I read his article and I feel like, you know what? I know how to do this, not just in a way that I'm going to be okay with, but I think that will be good enough for most of the people that are building their apps on Bullet Train. So I'm just going to get started on that. And normally what I do when I'm working on a feature like this is I'll open up a Scratchpad and just start thinking through the naming conventions. And I've already had the opportunity to do this a little bit, and it is maybe not the most exciting video topic to cover when I'm waffling back and forth and trying to think through this stuff. So I think one of the things that made sense here is I had the opportunity to think about this before, and then I'm just kind of working it out, what I've already thought through. So one of the things that Benedict gets into in his article is this idea of namespacing the resource for webhook stuff. Now, I totally agree with this, except I'm going to do it one level further. In Bullet Train, there are a lot of standard features. Webhooks, outbound webhooks are one standard feature, and then there's this a whole other set of features that are like inbound webhooks, things from Facebook, things from Twitter, and things from Twilio, for example. And these are features that we have in the roadmap down the road to make it easier to integrate with these services. So for Bullet Train, I actually need to differentiate between the webhooks that are inbound and the webhooks that are outbound. And the way that I've decided to do that for now is have webhooks as a namespace, and then have a incoming and outgoing. And then we can have like, webhook for outgoing webhook, and then incoming would be like Facebook webhook or something like that. So we have all the webhook stuff separated. I mean, honestly, these two things, incoming and outgoing webhooks, are not related at all. So, possibly we could just do it like incoming webhooks and outgoing webhooks. But it seemed to me, at least in terms of the file system, that it would make sense to do webhooks incoming and then webhooks outgoing, and have those separated like that. So that's what I was planning on doing. Let's see what else we are going to do here. And then there's this idea of the different events. So, for example, we might have Twitter webhook, and we're not implementing these ones up at the top. We're not implementing these right now. I just know that we'll have them down the road. But so if you consider that this class here is going to be our, the class for a webhook that we're sending out, there's other stuff as well. So for example, when somebody creates a endpoint, they are registering an endpoint that we are then going to target. So this might be the individual webhook, but we also want to have like an endpoint, and that's going to be something that a user registers. And so that endpoint is going to be have a team references, and the webhook itself is going to have like a body, which I'll say text, and it's actually going to be JSON B. And the webhook is going to have a subject, which is a references, and it's going to be polymorphic. I forget how to do that on, like, I forget how to notate that. And then it'll also have a, what else does the webhook have? A event type. And we're going to make that a references. So a webhook has, so for example, you might have, our default model that we always have in Bullet Train is thing. And so in this case, it might be like thing.updated, or thing.destroyed or deleted, destroyed, whatever you want to call it. So that's going to be the event type. Now, the secret to this is that a endpoint can specify what event types it wants to receive. So the default is going to be that all event types are delivered to an endpoint. So, but they can specify or filter for certain event types. And so how do you do that? Well, first of all, we need to keep a list. This is different than what Benedict did. So what Benedict did is he has this, let's see here. He has events. So on the webhook endpoint, he has this array of events, and that's how he's doing it. I want to do it a little bit differently. What I'm going to do is maintain a list So we're going to have an event, and should we call it an event or an event type? I'm going to call it an event, and that has a name, example thing dot updated. And so when we're configuring the endpoint, it has many events through the webhooks. Yeah, in fact, man, what's the right way to do this? Has many events through a endpoint events. Oh no, I forgot the beach ball. Don't do this. Oh, so sad. This is not a good sign. Well, here, I'm going to at least take a screenshot of this so I don't lose it. Nothing. Huh. There we go. That was fortunate. All right. So we have events through endpoint events. And so we're going to, modeling. I'll just do this. So the endpoint events is endpoint references and event references. And that is like a has many through. And so event has many endpoints through endpoint events. Whoops. It must be painful to watch me make mistakes like that. And then in both of these cases, they say has many endpoint events, class name. I don't actually remember off the top of my head whether this stuff in the domain model gets taken care of automatically if we just say like endpoint events. Let's try that right now. So all right, so that seems to work well enough. I don't think that this will. In fact, I think that this is expecting. If I try to use references here, I think it is not going to work the way that we are expecting. Let me think off the top of my head. What do we do? I don't have any other namespace references like this within Bullet Train, but that's okay. All right, so what's my next step here? So the idea here is that I can say we have, I'll show you how this works. It's going to have a delivery URL. So that's going to be the URL that we deliver it to. Let's see what else Benedict had. Target URL, events. Oh, the account, I already have that, right? So it's on a team. So the endpoint is configured for an entire team. And he has an index on events. Okay, cool. So we got that right. I like this. So the way that we create this is Rails generate model team references URL text. The way we define this is and the way that we generate this is string. We'll use a string for that. And then all of this stuff is just defined on, that's just defined on the class after it's created. So this one here and this one here, these are the tricky ones. So let's see, I want to see what happens. I'm going to create the endpoint first. So I'm going to create a new branch. Oh. And then what I want to test for is how are we supposed to define these? And while we're running, oh, never mind, it's already done. All right, so I did that so that I can have a easier time doing this and potentially getting errors. Let's try this. This is going to have an error, I bet, because there's no table for it to reference. Yeah, so it's saying endpoints, relation endpoints does not exist. No problem. All right, let's try to figure this out. Yeah, all right. Well, whatever. I guess what I need to do is just if anybody knows a better way to do this, let me know, but I'll do it like this. Do it the old way. So I'll destroy the old model that I created and then recreate this one with the ID. And then in the Here we go. We'll do belongs to endpoint class name. Here, actually, I want to see if this works in event. So what I'm going to test here is, does this namespace stuff work properly? And my guess is no. Here, I'll make these optional true for now. Okay, so we got one. Oh. Really? Oh, this is cool. All right, so let's see. Now we have this other thing. We have this other endpoint. So if we do webhooks outgoing. So it does. It picks up on the namespace is our whole point here. And we'll make the team, some team and save it. And so now we have an endpoint. And then we want to make this endpoint that worked. So the endpoint event record. Oh, fantastic. That's great. All right, so we'll make our endpoint URL, something silly. In fact, we'll make it webhooks, incoming, bullet train. So, yep. And save that endpoint. Great. So, okay, so this actually works like I expected. I just have to, man, I wish I knew how to write the migration thing better, but, because now I'm missing the index on that relationship and all of that stuff. So, if somebody knows how to do that, please reach out to me and teach me, and then I'll teach, everybody else. All right, so we got the webhooks event thing created, and now we need, in fact, I need to fix something. So the optional true is not good. In this case, we now want to create the event list, and we can do that just like that. And then in the seeds, I'm going to create, so for a class, so we'll say class, user, thing, team, some of the basic. In fact, if we just go through our models, let's look at yeah, that's pretty good. So for each of these classes, yeah, I'll just call it class object. Oh, model class is actually probably better. So model class, what we'll do is we'll say we want a webhook outgoing event. Nope, not endpoint event. Outgoing event. Here we go. So this one right here, in our seeds file, we're going to create one of those. Is that the right way of doing it? Let's try this. So if I go into a terminal, so model class is thing. Yeah, that'll work. So if I do something like API key, yeah, good. So that does what I want. And then I'll say action. And so the actions will be created, updated, deleted, and we don't really do a webhook for red. So I guess that'll be it. Boom. And now when you look at our list of webhooks, the events, you get thing created, thing updated, thing deleted. So these are things that people can subscribe to now. Now, let's see here. If I want to take, the first 3 of those and take my endpoint I'm going to call it EP. So EP, and then I want events to, I want to add to the events the first 3 event definitions we have. Oh, we missed this in our modeling thing. So the event or the endpoint has many events. So we'll reload that. We'll reload the endpoint. Could not find the association endpoint events in model endpoint. That's because we didn't define. There we go. Boom, it worked. So now we have a, if we look at our endpoint and ask what events are you registered for? Done. And then if we have a webhook, so have we even created the actual webhook itself? So the webhook is going to have an event. It's going to have a body. It's going to have a subject, which is polymorphic. And how? Oh, you know what we can do? I don't even know how to do this on the command line, so I'll just do and the body is like that. So So that's how we do the polymorphic relationship. And this has nothing to do with delivery or any of that yet. We haven't even tried to do delivery. Okay, it's barking about something. Events doesn't exist. Right, same problem. So we'll do destroy that model. All right, so now we have outgoing webhooks. So in our console, I really should just open that up on another line. So I've created a webhook. Whoops, sorry. I create a webhook. The event can be so. Has an event type. What else? So for one, oh, whoops. All right, it's going to expect event to be something. So we'll do webhooks outgoing event.first, whatever that is. All right, that's great. And then we'll also do a belongs to subject polymorphic true. And so if we try to go through and recreate another one, it's going to roll back because it wants a subject. So we'll make the subject thing first, which is works. There is a thing, and its subject ID is 2. And then finally, when we create a webhook, we are going to want to take that thing first to JSON. Whoops. There we go. So, that's interesting. Okay, good. So we've created the webhook, and then if we had that webhook, as we do here, we could always say the webhook event, and then we can say, hey event, who are your endpoints? Oh, and we don't have that yet, so outgoing. And we already have this actually in the has many events, and then has many endpoint events. So now when we look at an event, no, something's wrong here. We've done this wrong. I grabbed that from the wrong. That was for the endpoint. So the endpoint already has that stuff. We want to do the event, which has the relationship in the opposite order. There we go. So that's the webhook we were working with. And then we want the event, and we can say to the event, do you have any endpoints? And it says uninitialized constant. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know why this happens sometimes. Actually, you know what? Give me a second. This might work. Oh, you know what? I don't have to do the class name. That was the issue. And then obviously I did that in the wrong order. There, it works. What this doesn't account for is the fact that the team of the endpoint, what we really want to know is for a webhook, does the event have any endpoints that match the subject of the webhook's team? So it's like where team equals something like that. And that's what we're really looking for. And in this case, the endpoint is on team 12, but the webhook subject is on team 1. So if we take the endpoint and make it the same as the webhook subject team. Now when we run that query, there is an endpoint. So that's from a security perspective, an important thing to distinguish. So that's fine. We haven't actually implemented any webhook logic yet, but that's the core domain model. So when we look at that, you can see now in our models, we have the outgoing module, and then we have an endpoint that we can configure. We have the event itself that will be, or not the event itself, but the event type. Oof, man, I'm not sure how I feel about that naming. I may change this, but the point is you have the event, which is like the name of an event, like user.created. And then you have the webhook, which is the actual thing that will be delivered. We have no keeping track of whether it has been delivered or any of that stuff. This is just the first few models, and I'm going to take a break for now. I think that's we have chewed on enough for now. And then we can come back and look at how are we going to handle delivery? How are we going to track delivery? What if there's multiple endpoints that match for a particular webhook? We got to think about all of that stuff. So that's it for now. All right, thanks.